Good morning, everybody. It being 9 o'clock, although our clock says 10 o'clock, but 9 o'clock on Wednesday, November 10th, will be in the Human Services Committee to order. If we could call roll and see where we're at.
Lewis? Allen?
Sorry, Lewis here.
Thank you. Allen? Bates?
Bates here.
Davist?
Davist here.
Iqbal?
Iqbal present.
Kenyon?
Here.
Pirog? Shepro? Sturgis?
Here, Surges here.
You have a quorum.
We have quorum. Okay, before we get started this morning, we do have a couple of items. Jake and Jamie, we're going to push you guys a little bit quickly this morning to get through. As Rich Ryan joins us, I'm going to ask that we modify the agenda to get Rich in. We are at deadline as usual on insurance contracts. And I need to get a full understanding for the committee. I had several phone calls that came in yesterday saying you were quite ambiguous about your commitment to when the insurance deadline is. And that ambiguity was very specific in that most of the things that the board does, we approve an item and that's it. It's done. It's motions are set in action. Unfortunately, the insurance contracts require not only approval, but they require a check. And getting a check for the size that we need sometimes takes a little bit of maneuvering to walk through departments and hand-holding. And to say that December 1st is the renewal, well, we need to have it approved well in advance and walk the checks through. That was the ambiguity. I didn't want to say that to a board level, but at committee level, I think you all understand it's the same routine we go through every year. And we wish insurance companies would lock those prices in for more than 30, 60, 90 days, but they don't when you're dealing with this size and capacity. So as Rich comes, we'll modify.
It's pretty tricky that we can do specific ambiguity. I like
We
that.
use very specific ambiguity. Okay. Approval of minutes from October 13th. So
Yes,
moved by
moved.
Kenyon, second by Bates. Any conversation on those? Is that roll call or can we all in favor?
You can ask for unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman.
I just heard Mr. Shepro ask for unanimous consent. Is there anyone opposed? Minutes carried. Public comments. Mr. McQuillen, are you here and would like to speak? And I do want to acknowledge that after the meeting yesterday, I did feel compelled to email Mr. McQuillen last night and make him aware that we are discussing the tuition reimbursement, item 8, under old business number D, and make him aware that that discussion was happening this morning. And I did that in good faith with Mr. McQuillen, and I welcome you to the committee.
Thank you. I want to start my timer. My name is Bob McQuillen. I reside in Batavia. Your agenda includes a discussion on the tuition reimbursement program. My understanding is that you are considering revisions to the plan. My concern is the current plan and the abuses of it. Specifically, $58,000 was spent by the IT director for college courses for an employee. I don't have to go into details because it has been in the news for months. What I want to know is how this happened and what is being done to have this misspending returned to the taxpayers. While the board's chairman has determined no policies were violated, according to the county's own employee handbook on page 27, several policies have been broken. The taxpayers deserve the answer, and whether you like it or not, you've been elected to provide these answers. It is not good enough to close the barn door after the horse has left. Thank you.
Mr. McQuillen, I thank you very much for coming by this morning and speaking. Members of the committee, I think that I have been very deliberate in my actions. We are not here today to go backwards on this item or seek retribution or repayment. We are specifically here today to make sure that if there's an ambiguity in our bylaws, constitution, codification, employee handbook, whatever moniker you want to attach to it, that ambiguity is dissolved and this situation never happens again. And that's the charge that we're here for today. If anybody has a problem with that, you're welcome to speak with me offline. But I believe when we set out to do this months ago, this is what we've been building for. And today is just the next iteration of where we're at. And Mr. McQuillen, as I told you in the email last night, and as I've told my fellow commissioners, I personally see this in two different directions. One of them being tuition reimbursement, the other one being continuing education. And you will see in the meeting that I have been very deliberate about those two lanes. And I look forward to the commissioner and just publicly, every one of the commissioners in this committee were sent an email last week, well in advance of the meeting, saying, here are the items for discussion and review. And if you have any input or ambiguity or don't understand, feel free to reach out before the committee. And neither Jamie nor I received a phone call on it at all. So I look forward to a debate this morning or a conversation this morning. And I don't mean to, debate wasn't the right word. I apologize. I look forward to conversation this morning on both sides of this and trying to move this forward. So thank you, sir.
Could I ask a question?
Absolutely.
If you are not going backwards, which is fine, what committee on the board is willing to discuss this and go backwards? I'm trying to find that out.
Yeah, I will be happy to get you that answer. I don't, because I'm really candid, I don't know if it is this committee or not, but that's not the charge that we gave to the committeemen. And I'm being as honest as I can about that. So
Oh, I appreciate
I'll
it.
get back with you.
Yeah, thank you
Mr.
very much.
Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Shepard.
if Mr. McQuillen will call me, I would be happy to give my feedback to his questions without suggesting that I am in any way speaking for the board or the committee, but some of the details, perhaps he has not found in the press, or if he did not participate in all of the meetings discussing this. And I would certainly be happy to do that.
Ken, thank you for reaching out like that.
Thanks, Ken. You have my email address. If you could just send me your contact information,
I
I'll
will
reach
do
out to
that.
you. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, moving from public comment, monthly financials. Do we have anybody here? Or are they all online? I believe they are online. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody in the room or online? Got
Mr.
Mark?
Chairman, ask unanimous consent to place the reports on file.
I see no objection to that. Was there any questions? With no opposition, so moved. Okay,
And if I may, Chairman,
yes, ma'am.
may I just make a comment? And I'm sorry, Mr. McQuillen, that I arrived late. And I'm also responding to Mr. Shepard's comments. Please feel free to call me as well. My email is cpirog@canecoil.org. I'd love to be able to talk to you. There are some decisions that were made that you may have read about in the paper that we made by the state's attorney, and I agreed with her findings. So we want to make sure that you may talk, of course, to Ken Shepard. You can talk to any of these board members that you so choose. And of course, your own board member. I believe it's Mr. Brown, perhaps. I hate to put you on the spot. Who is it, Mr. Martin? Mr. Martin, who is also an attorney. And I'm sure all of us will be happy to give our insights into this issue for you.
Hey, have you been receiving my email?
No, sir, I have not, and I checked yesterday. I just received your email responses that you sent out yesterday, and that's the first time I've ever received it. And I did an email. And I did check yesterday. I checked a couple of times and I just never received it. But I did receive yesterday's.
Madam Chair, thank you. Jake, I'm going to ask you to power down for 1 second, and if committee will allow us some leeway on this. Rich, if you're here, we would love for you to come up to the plate and bring us up to speed on the insurance information. And I appreciate everybody's flexibility here. And Rich, if I can set the stage, and I think I've done this several times, insurance renewals are only good for a limited period of time. They don't do it 6 months in advance. They don't do it a year in advance. We get lucky sometimes when we speak with Blue Cross Blue Shield or some of the health providers on something that's a little bit more, I don't even know what the word is, but contractual, if you will. But on the liability insurance, workers' compensation, cyber liability, umbrella excess, you're lucky if you can get somebody 30, 60, 90-day lock would be amazing. And so each year we find ourselves juggling with the deadline to make. December 1st is the renewal. And Rich, before you walked in, I made the statement that unfortunately, we just can't vote as a board and say, here you go, here's the renewal. We're approved. They need a check. And it takes 10 days to physically walk a check through. So we need to be very conscious about how we're doing, what we're doing, how to get money to these carriers to make sure that we don't lapse on a renewal. And although Mr. Leonard and I are in both agreement with saying it's easy to lapse and write a letter and say, hey, we've had no claims. Can we pick up the 4 days that we missed? Yeah, what happens during those 4 days if something did occur? And I don't ever want to learn that. So Rich, with that said, I've teed you up, bring us up to speed. And Jamie, did you make some, is this the really small print item in yellow? Dynamite. Rich, walk us through. And Blair, do you have that on screen? Excuse me one moment. Do you have this one? Was this in the packet? No. Okay. Okay, we do not have it on screen. So walk us through really slowly. If somebody wants to email it to him, I can get it out.
I have it here. Okay. So I apologize for that. The reason for the updates coming yesterday were because the last layer of the liability excess came in on Monday. We were able to negotiate some revisions to get that down on what's on this sheet. So we were able to get that done yesterday morning and sent that to Jamie.
For those of you that aren't aware, umbrella excess coverage is oftentimes priced based on the underlying protections. So that's always the last piece of the puzzle. And they don't always give you a price until you tell them what you're paying for everything and what the limits are underneath it.
That is correct.
Okay.
The other complication that we discussed over the summer was the primary insurer that was providing the first 5 million, Trident, went out of the public entity business. So we had to find new carriers, and we found a replacement. Actually, it's a relationship that the county has had for over 30 years with Safety National. So we have them on the first layer primary. So if you're looking at this, that's the first box in yellow on the right-hand side. Since last month, the updates are in the boxes right below the Safety National. So we were able to negotiate a program with Lloyd's through the BRIT public entity program with Ambridge, and replace Illinois Union. Chubb was wanting to do that layer, but they weren't competitive. So we were able to get this in there. As I said, Hallmark, Gemini, and Allied World was the last piece of the puzzle that we got yesterday. So we are up to 25 million coverage. We could go higher if the county wants to. Chubb would be interested in looking at another layer. At one point, we had 35 million, but when...
And again, let's define that. There is no hard and fast rule as to what an entity or a county of our size should have, especially a self-insured entity of our size, and how those layers work. And at times we have fluctuated, I think, as high as 35 million.
That's correct.
But at times as low as 10 million depending on what the budget had and what we're looking at, I think 25 million seems to be the comfort zone. And if somebody was to ever see me at the Jewel or bump into me at church and say, why did you choose that? I couldn't defend it. It's just seems to be the right fit for us. And I wish that there was an attorney or a consultant that would come and say, well, based on this modeling, but Rich, I don't think that modeling is this.
You're
What
in
are
line
you
with
comfortable with?
what we do is we check with other municipalities of your size, counties of this size, and they're in the range of 20 to 25. I know one that's in the 30 million range, but based on past claims history too is also kind of a driving factor. So
Are these all per?
Mavis, use your microphone.
Thank you, sir. Are these all per incident, like 25 million?
per occurrence.
Yeah, per occurrence.
That's correct. And this includes, the liability includes the public officials liability, the law enforcement liability, the general liability, and the auto liability. So
For those online, can you see that on screen now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. And Rich, just so we're up to speed, all of the yellow has dollar amounts filled in. The only thing that we're still missing is the cyber liability.
that's correct. We have been working through the IT department on that particular coverage. Initially, the Access insurance company that's on the county risk right now had asked for an application, and there were some concerns initially about some of the security protections, and those have all been addressed. The one issue we're running into with Access is that they're changing their deductible structure. So we are looking at alternative markets, and that's what's caused that delay. But we're again working through with Jamie and the IT department. We have three supplementals that there's a few questions that once we get those answered, we should be able to turn that around.
And again, just for everybody's edification, this is not specific to the county with this cyber insurance. This is in the entire industry. And you are seeing corporations left and right go to multi-factor authentication. Everybody has to look at their phone just to sign into their email, blah, 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 blah. But if you look at ransomware and some of the things that have occurred, it's justified. And I applaud the industry for reacting to this, but it's a pain in the butt. I mean, there's no polite way to say that.
And to dovetail what you're saying, there's from pre-COVID to now, there's been a 400% increase in claims activity for ransomware attack. And in my own book, I've had 4 in the last 2 weeks. So with clients that we're working through. So
Mavis?
So would Bates here. So would this pay a ransom?
yes,
Okay.
yes, it would up to the limit of $1 million. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we have, or even higher limits. But right now, the prices are going up on cyber and deductibles are going up, and they're basing it on things that don't make sense, such as revenue. And that has nothing to do
What
with whether
difference
you're going to
does
be
that make?
attacked or
Risk,
not
right.
attacked. Yes.
And Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm going on a limb on this one, but the cyber liability insurance used to be as low as like $25,000 or $30,000.
Yes,
And we're at $1 million now. That's how we've tried to react to the marketplace.
that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And just for a quick second, the liability coverage that we were talking about with the top box on the right and the 4 or 5 below it, those have all been looked at as far as carriers going to. I have another list which I'll share with Jamie. We've been out to 22 markets in the last 2 months working through these numbers, and we've got a specialist that helps us with the public entity. He's also available to work on the cyber if we need him. So we're working through that too. But we should have an answer if we can get these supplementals back this week. We should be able to have an answer very shortly on the cyber and be able to finish.
Okay. Blair, can you go down to the bottom there? And Rich, can you tell us year over year?
Yes.
Is the white column, the 2.1 million, the premiums we paid last year, and the right column
Is what's being
in the
proposed.
yellow is being proposed. So we're up about $200,000 without the cyber, but we're anticipating the cyber to be less than 20 grand. Is that?
We're just not sure yet. It'll depend on where the deductibles fall, but
Okay.
it could be in the 35 range. But
Have you and Mr. Onsick been in communication on this, and is this built in financially for budget
That
purposes?
I'm not sure. Were you?
Okay.
Okay.
And if I could,
He's reviewing.
Mark, if you're online, Jamie, if we can just work this backwards really quickly. Rich, when do you need approval and a check to make sure that coverage is in force?
Thank you. So I checked with underwriters yesterday. So what we can do is if we get authority to bind, we can do what they call a soft bind, which you would probably understand, where the underwriters will hold the coverage bound pending the board meeting in December if it has to be for approval. We have a 30-day window, and we can stretch that if we need to, but to get payments into them. So once the board approves the program, we've got 30 days.
Okay.
So we're good for really till the end of December.
And again, is that 30 days subject to the notion of we will accept your money and bind coverage as long as you haven't had a claim in those 30 days?
No.
Okay, so that
If they
soft
agree-
coverage will bind us.
If they agree to bind, we would like to bind everything on 12/1 so that there's no hiccups with that. They're considering coverage bound. It's just a matter of getting final approval from the board
Okay,
on the
so
resolution.
Madam Chair, if I can, we have a special meeting scheduled for 11:30. Is that a committee of the whole? Is that a,
It's at 9:45 on the 30th of this month. That's
it's a
special
regular
one.
board meeting?
Yes, it is. It's a
We
special.
will
board
be
meeting.
circumventing, in my opinion, several other committees. Like this would normally be birthed here, go to finance, go to executive, go to board meeting.
It-
Will we maintain that, or are we going straight from human services directly to the special board meeting?
Well, is this a soft bind, correct?
No, they're going to look for approval. Soft bind means we don't have to have the check to them.
Yes.
Correct.
They're making that accommodation.
Correct. So I think we'd be able to go to formal exec, and there'll be another December board meeting. So we can authorize a soft bind, I believe.
On the 30th?
On the 30th.
That would work.
Would that work for you,
Yeah,
Rich?
absolutely would work.
You guys are making this easy today. This,
Mr.
and again,
Chairman,
I
for the
think-
new board members, we found ourselves in a situation a few years back on a Thursday night going, we don't have coverage tomorrow. Somebody needs to sign this. I'm not authorized to sign $2 million worth,
Remember that.
but if we didn't sign it, there was no coverage. You're in a conundrum there. And that was about the most uncomfortable evening I've ever had. And I don't want to be back in that again. So
Fortunately, we're not in the situation where the claims have occurred. They've occurred in the past, so we're still dealing with those, but
we're trending well right now, my
Trending
friend.
better,
Well,
yes.
you'll get everything
Yes.
appropriately signed in due fashion.
perfect.
Perfect.
Mr. Chairman, Shepard,
Yes, sir.
in the event somebody thought it was necessary, the board could suspend the rules that might otherwise require it to go to some other committee.
Okay. And that's what we're trying to determine today. And again, this isn't something that we choose to do. This is out of necessity. And I apologize for any inconvenience on that. And Rich, thank you again for driving out yet one more time and for all the we say this so often here that we are blessed with the staff that we have. And so often I try and make sure that we communicate and our external professionals, because Rich and his entire team have been nothing but fabulous. Is there anything I'm missing on this that you'd like to speak to?
No, I will just keep Jamie and Roger updated on where we are with the cyber, and we should be able to wrap that up fairly quickly here.
Okay.
I have just a question while Roger and you are in the room. With the cybersecurity, do we have to put the protocols in place before we accept the insurance? Or the insurance mandates that there are protocols in place? Pre-existing protocols?
My answer is going to be twofold. If we renew with Access, the current carrier, they have to be in place on December 1st. The others, any other competitive carriers will understand that we are working through those. They don't have the history, but we will give them that history, and I don't think we'll have any issues with that.
Roger, with those protocols, I assume that each insurance company may have similar but different protocols. Is that correct? And with those, what is the cost of those protocols to implement?
Good morning, Roger Fonstock with the County IT Department. So the measures that they've asked us to put in place thus far required some additional licensing to expand. That was for multi-factor authentication. We do that now for public safety, for criminal justice information systems. So we have a lot of this in place. Some of the measures were a matter of how we configure certain things. So we were updating some configuration to just follow their guidelines. Fortunately, we have a lot of these things in place. You know, the other requirements that were provided to us from a couple of other companies that are wishing to provide pricing, we have a couple of things we need to look into to see if we can get additional competitive pricing with the broker. I think that's our next step, is how many of those supplements or other things can we actually accomplish in the time frame. Just hearing from Mr. Ryan that we had additional time if we are changing carriers to comply, I think that would help. We were working towards access compliance, which we were trying to finish by the 1st of December. And I think some of you saw the memo that we sent out, which was about multi-factor being required.
I blamed Rich for all those emails I got.
So, but I think we're in good shape for the access requirements. We met with them, we met with their security team, and feel very comfortable implementing what they've recommended, and a few other things that we're going to try for the other supplementals to get other pricing, I think will help get a better competitive price for us. It is very difficult. I've heard from a lot of people that municipalities in general are going to have a really hard time meeting these requirements to get the insurance. There's a lot of people in the same or worse position than us.
Roger, my firm represents a Fortune 300 company, and if you think it's bad just getting into the email system now, trying to VPN in, everything is changing. Every software strategy that we had on how do your employees attach remotely. Now, maybe 10 years ago, that was who cares, but at the tail end of a COVID where 50% of your workforce is still work from home, this is earth shattering. So
yeah, the last 2 years have been so dynamic for us to change things with the pandemic. I'm actually proud of the fact that we're where we're at. So yeah, we're in.
Sounds like we're
not in bad
behind, but
shape.
I mean, really, we're doing well. So
Not in bad shape right now.
okay. Does that answer your questions, Madam Chair?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And Roger, thanks again for all you're
Okay.
doing on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mo Iqbal, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I have a question on the ransom part of the policy. Generally, when this policy is discussed, it is closed door. I'm coming from the corporate world. Once you open it up and say, we have this much policy and ransom, then it's people will come and grab it. It was particularly true for corporate people going abroad in countries where people were taken hostage. So the practice in the corporate world is to have the policy, but not to show it to anyone. I don't know how it works in this scenario.
I don't know that we have the ability to hide that from the public. Rich, do you, in any of your other clients, how are they handling that? Great question, Mo. Thanks.
That's a very good question. Actually, that has not come up. We've got other coverages sensitive to corporations relative to executives traveling abroad and things like that, that we do code those differently. They're not called, for instance, a cyber policy would be called something else. You would create your own internal code for it. So we could talk about doing something like that for that coverage. And then I suppose if you wanted your limit not to be shown, but it's
Public
Mr.
record.
Chairman?
public record.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Shepro?
Yes, Mr. Shepro.
There are exemptions in both the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act for such things, for example, the security plans. And perhaps we might ask the state's attorney to opine. I think things, as Mr. Iqbal and Mr. Ryan have been discussing, might very well fall within the ambit of things which are not required to be made public. For example, you can't file a FOIA request and say, I want a diagram of the alarm system for a
Ken,
county
thank you so
facility.
much. Jamie, could you make note of that and get together with the state's attorney's office and come up with something that might satisfied. And Mo, thank you again. I believe that we are stronger together than apart, and I appreciate both you guys chiming in on that.
Good point.
Not something that was on my conscience. We're worried about getting the coverage, not protecting the ambiguity of it. So,
Excuse me, but
Madam Chair,
it's public document right now. It's in red.
that's a little late, but next year when we move it to the undisclosed amount, maybe we would.
No.
Was out there last year and the year before as well. So, I mean, it's
So,
okay. Rich, anything else that we can answer for you at committee level now?
Not at this point, but.
You're a
I'll be-
gentleman.
Thank
and
you. I'll be back to you as soon as possible.
Thanks for your patience.
Jamie, thanks.
Appreciate it. And board, thank you. Committee, thank you for allowing the flexibility on the agenda. And before Rich leaves, does anybody have any questions for him at all? Okay, Jake, Veteran Assistance. Let's go back onto agenda item number 5A.
Good morning, thank you. For the Veterans Assistance Commission, this is our September report. Our days pending for disability claims were trending about a day faster than the average Illinois veteran and almost 6 days faster for pension claims. One thing concerning in the second chart is the inventory of claims. There's 14,308 claims pending total in the state of Illinois. 191 of those belong to our office. That's higher than it's ever been, and that's continuing to trend up for this next month too. So that's about 50 active cases per staff member, plus the 25 that they're working on at any given time to develop to submit to the VA, and that's getting up there. We filed 42 disability claims in the month of September, 2 pension, 1 dependency indemnity compensation, 2 survivors pension, 5 applications for healthcare, and 3 appeals, with 237 forms completed total. $178,000, almost $179,000 in new benefits awarded, bringing our fiscal year to date total to $3.5 million in new benefits. That's dollars in veterans' pockets here in Kane County. And we had no financial assistance expenditures. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Ms. Bates, you had a question?
What's VAC?
I can't.
What is VAC? It was on the chart.
Veterans Affairs Commission?
VAC.
Veterans
We're,
Assistance Commission?
Back up, please. More up, please.
Blair, scroll up.
There, stop. Thanks, Blair. VAC.
Veterans Assistance Commission, that's our office. So the red line would be us.
Okay, so this means,
So
so
in
it's
the
all
state,
zero?
I'm sorry?
Total claims pending, so we have no claims pending.
No, if you look at the numbers above their dots on the red line. So for the month of September, we have 191 claims pending.
Oh, in the,
Yeah, it's just the chart is scaled odd because there's 14,000 claims pending total, and we're trying to represent our amount on there as well.
so, but the blue one says all IL
Yeah, that's
Illinois.
all the claims pending in the state of Illinois.
in Illinois?
Yep.
So, so it's not that we have 0 claims pending?
No, if you look to the right-hand side on that red trend line there, we're at 191.
Oh, okay, but the chart looks like it's 0.
Yeah, it's just because
It looks flat. It's
Yeah.
too
You can
small to
make the line
increment up.
bumpy or, oh, it's so small that, okay, I get it now. There's a little,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jake? Jake, thanks for all you do. And I may have mentioned it to you. There was a Facebook organization, 22 for November, standing for 22 push-ups a day for the month of November in awareness of, is it suicide prevention? And just to let you know, one committee chair does have his 220 push-ups in for the month.
And well, I can challenge you on that, sir.
Are you?
Oh, heck yes, every morning.
Can we do it live now on the committee?
I haven't put mine in yet today. I would love to, man. I'm just saying. They are there every day, and I've posted twice saying this is where we're at. And it's really a joy to see the involvement for this cause from children 3 and 4 years old doing push-ups with their parents to entire corporate teams doing it in their cubicles. I cannot stress enough, and county chairwomen. So I cannot stress enough. Thank you for all you do and your team, and we appreciate it. So
On a day for 22 days? Does that qualify?
I'm up to 32, so I'm doing okay. So
We're looking for goat yoga too.
yeah, there you go.
The mayor of St. Charles says
I'll
goat
do
yoga.
yoga.
I've gone from 10 to about 25. So that's pretty good.
I'll be looking for your post on
And,
this. Department of Human Services, Jamie, item 6.
Sir?
I'm so sorry, Mavis.
Before we leave Veterans Affairs, I'd
Yes.
like to wish everybody a happy Veterans Day tomorrow.
Absolutely.
and honor
Say
all
that
of our
again right into the microphone.
I would like, Mavis Bates, I'd like to wish everyone a happy Veterans Day tomorrow. And thank you, veterans, for our peace and freedom.
Absolutely.
And Aurora's going to have stuff going on
Beautiful.
up till the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Mavis. Appreciate it. Jake, thanks for all you do.
Happy birthday, Marines today too.
Oh, huzzah.
Nice job, Gummy.
Jamie Labrillo,
What a
Human
kid.
Resources Department. I'm going to kind of roll through these a little bit quick because I know we're tight on time. So please stop me if you have any questions on any of these reports as I go along. First up is the Blue Cross Blue Shield invoice for the month. We are tracking on the high side of normal, but it's completely within tolerance. Blair, if you'd scroll back a little bit to the financial reports, it's packet page 13 at the end of the financial reports. This is our health insurance fund. As you can see, it's doing fine. It's been fairly consistent since April of 2021. So just for a big picture view, as you look at our health insurance status, we're in good shape.
And for the committee's edification, again, we have a $9 million target goal that we established 3 years ago when we pulled from IPBC. And we don't have a formulary on why we chose $9 million. But between Onzik and Mike Baker's team, we thought that 9 million was more than comfortable. That's been our goal to reach that. And I believe that we are ahead of goal right now and doing very well.
Yes, we're doing very well. So the fund is healthy and everything is good. I think just COVID has added a lot of extra factors to estimating health insurance amounts and the amount of care people have needed and some extra costs associated with COVID treatment.
And again, not good or bad, just different than anybody would have ever anticipated.
It's just extra variables. So, but the fund is doing very well and everything is good. So if we go back to the BCBS MERP report, those numbers are strong. Still have about 58 people in MERP right now.
Before we leave MERP, I just want to disclose that we did have a situation this past month where a countywide official approached us asking if everybody's aware that, open enrollment just closed. That brings forth everybody's, acuity and sensitivity to their own coverages. We had 2 employees from one of the countywide offices call and say, hey, something's not right here. We don't quite understand it. Should we be eligible? Shouldn't we be eligible? There was a little bit of ambiguity there that we've had to work our way through. I don't think that we've wrapped that up yet, or have we?
I think it's somewhat still pending. The state's attorney is looking at it right now.
Jamie and I moved that to the state's attorney's office for review. But this is the appropriate committee to not let this slip by without mentioning that. We did have 2 employees seek enrollment. And without saying too much, I think we have a situation where an employee went from part-time to full-time. At the time they went to full-time, they should have been offered certain benefits. Whether they did or didn't receive the package, what we've determined is there's not a catalyst event that seems to occur from payroll to human resources to acknowledge that change, because that change does require us to promote certain things. Am I saying that even remotely?
There already is a process in place that they are receive a packet with information in it when they move from non-benefit eligible to benefit eligible. I think the question more looked around, do they need an in-person orientation at that time, which is not the current practice. So that's under review.
Perfect. She says it much more eloquently than I do. So thank you, Jamie. Appreciate that.
Very eloquent, as were you too, Mr. Shepard.
Next up is the Assured Partners Report for the health insurance. Again, this is just covering claims amounts for the month. And that's last year, that's up now. If you keep scrolling, you'll see then the next 12 months. And then if you scroll down one more, we're in this unusual little 6-month period. If you remember, we had a 6-month extension of our contract. We used to be on a mid-year renewal, and we wanted to get back on a calendar year renewal, which is what our benefits run on. So that's why it's a little unusual. So January 1st, we're actually going to start with a clear slate under a new contract.
Does everybody understand that and remember what we did and why we did it? Any questions? Jamie, thank you.
Next up, we have the workers' compensation reports and liability insurance reports. Again, we're continuing to trend in the right direction with our claims. Both workers' comp and liability claims are trending in the right direction. There's no red flags at this time. Did anyone have questions on the reports? We are working hard to settle out some of the older claims that are a little larger. So you may have seen some of those going through board recently for approvals and just getting some of those larger claims settled. So we're working with our attorneys on settling those larger claims.
How old on an aged report? How old do you think? What's our furthest?
We still have one that's almost 10 years old.
Okay.
We're still.
I
working on that
just
one.
want to set expectations with people that when you say that, there's 1 or 2 of these that are dinosaurs.
There were, I think, when I came on 6, and I think we're down to 4 old claims. So we do have those up to settle.
Appreciate the effort.
Next is the applicants report. Last committee, there were just some questions from the committee about exit interviews and having a report that was adjusted to reason for leaving. So I actually did some full year aggregate reports and included some turnover information. So if you want to scroll all the way down, there's a tab on the left that says discussion, exit interviews, turnover reports. If anyone had questions on the applicants or new hire report, please let me know. They were pretty standard, but I kind of wanted to just briefly cover the exit interview. So I have drafted a possible exit interview form that would be sent to employees when they announce their resignation. That would give them an opportunity to just answer a few questions about their reason for leaving the county so that we would be able to better track why our employees are resigning.
Jamie, if I could ask the committee members, how often do you want to see this? This takes, effort and energies and resources. Can we agree that on a quarterly basis, we might put together a report that gives us some indicators? Again, we're trying to put data behind conjecture and say, this is why we're losing people. They moved out of Illinois. They took a better job. We didn't pay them enough. It's better benefits. Would it be okay if we said quarterly on that rather than monthly? Mavis?
I think quarterly sounds fine, except if there's an exception. I mean, if 5 employees quit all at once, I'd like to know that right away.
Jamie, are you comfortable with that? That if you see some trend that looks like an anomaly, you would bring it to the committee?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Anybody online? Anita?
Yeah,
Deb?
no, I think that's great. I would just add a box for retired.
Oh,
We actually already separately track that. So that's actually on our
Okay.
payroll action form. So this would just be sent to people who resign without retiring.
Okay.
So retiring.
All right.
is
its
it
own group.
too much effort to just add it to this?
No, we
Well,
Just
certainly
we
or
can
just
keep
when
it
you
in-
do, or just when you do the 3-month, add that one in too. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do both. So we already would be included. We are already tracking retiree versus resignation, but I can add it to this as well, just to make sure it's not lost if a retiring employee would like to fill this out.
Yeah, I kind of think it is because I think sometimes if you have a good handle on what their career was like and, have some good suggestions for us. So thank you.
Perfect. Madam Chair.
Mr.
do you
Chair,
have-
Gums.
Gums, hang on one second, Madam Chair.
Just a question, Jamie. Do you have to input this manually when you get these
This is new, so we have not been doing this yet. So this is something that I'm suggesting we set out to employees right now. All the information that Human Resources receives is resigned, retired, terminated, or deceased. Those are the 4 available reasons for ending employment on our payroll action form. So it's currently all the information that is collected. And no, we don't manually input that. That comes from the payroll system. If we institute this, then there would probably be some manual input to these.
I was just wondering, maybe you could work with Roger if there was like a software program so the information could be collected, it'd be a little bit easier for you perhaps.
I'll see about, a possibility like a Survey Monkey or something that comes to them, and then they could go ahead and input that. I think we'd probably get better response doing it electronically. So this is in the early inception stages. So I think that's an excellent idea, and we will look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the efforts on this, and thank you for responding to and Michelle, you had a question before maybe?
Yeah, I apologize. I just wanted to say thanks for doing this. I think we're going to get some very exciting information from this. And I just want to say thanks to Jamie for doing it. I think it's great.
Well done. Mavis?
I believe this might be better if it was anonymous.
By the time it gets to us, it will be anonymous. It'll be scrubbed.
It will be anonymous to the committee, but it won't be anonymous to Human Resources. It's necessary for us to determine by department that we have to send it to the employee once we find out that they're resigning. So we would have to direct it to the specific employee. I don't think we have enough resignations per month for it to be anonymous.
Okay.
Other than it will come to Human Resources and the information will not be sent to their department head. So for that, to their department, it would not be known what they said.
Okay.
Mavis, I can't appreciate what you're saying enough, but the goal is not to pigeonhole. The goal is to collect data to see,
Right.
to enhance some of the decisions we make as a board regarding budget items and where resources should be spent. And this, along with some of the other studies we're doing, I think will prove invaluable.
I
So-
was just thinking sometimes people are more frank in their answers when they don't think, like to say that you had conflict with your manager, conflict with your employees. I can see why it's not a good idea though, that you can't do it that way.
Right. I do. It does say kind of in the opening paragraph, and I think we're going to make sure employees know that their responses will be treated with confidence and will not necessarily make it back to their supervisors or managers. It's for aggregate data.
I see. All right,
For,
thanks.
instead of employee name, is there any, do we have a singular identification number that an employee has?
We have an employee number, and if we do it electronically, there might be that opportunity.
That
for it
might
to
be
use
one
that.
more layer of confidentiality that people might, I don't know. I'm just,
Right.
You're the
yeah.
expert.
yeah. We can take this offline though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions on that?
I see Roger taking notes on this already.
Jamie, let's wrap her up on work comp.
Okay. Work comp is wrapped up unless there were questions on it. Included in this is just a turnover report. I did look at our turnover percentages year over year. There wasn't anything I think that needs the committee's attention. There weren't any excessive numbers here, but anyone who'd like me to send them this report, I'm happy to send it to you. I did calculate an annual turnover report for both 2020 and 2021 to date.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, before we move on to compliance, Erica, if you were here for financials, we're fine and we appreciate, you're welcome to stay. We love having you, but okay. If this is the compliance report on training modules, I think that the board is going to get yelled at over all of the other groups.
And rightly so.
And rightly so. There you go, Mr. Kios. Thank you.
Board is a little behind on their training, not everyone. I do have a, by department list. We're still looking at trying to follow up with a total of about 70 employees across the entire county. Among the county board, we still have 11 that need to complete. the training. So, and we'll send you an email if that's you and let you know.
Mavis?
So just, I did it. And I'm still getting the, please remember to fill out your to do your sexual harassment training emails.
We haven't gotten your signed form yet, so I know you've done it. We just need to get you to sign that form that says I did it, and then we'll get those taken from you.
I didn't do it right.
We haven't gotten the signed form yet, so we'll get that signed form from you.
And just so we're clear, is there one form or two forms?
There's a single form that needs to be signed.
I sent
but
a form and you yelled at me and said, it's the wrong form.
I didn't yell, but you signed the handbook acknowledgement form, and we actually need the form that acknowledges the training, sexual harassment training, not the handbook. So that's the form we need.
That's Caius. That's an electronic form at the end of the training. Is that correct?
It is the electronic form at the end of the training. If if you're off the county network and you watch the YouTube video, then you would need to hand sign the form and send it to us, because then it won't electronically
Chris, if you
record.
do
You
it
have to
at
be on
home,
county network.
you have to print it, sign it, scan it back.
Done.
Yeah, it's not electronic. I think I understand what you're saying.
Right.
And unless you're in this environment,
But
if
you
you
have
do it from home, it's a different.
you have to look for it. So you make sure you print it out and do that, right?
It's attached to any of the emails that were sent regarding the sexual harassment, but if anyone is missing it, please just send me an email. I'd be happy to send you a form and the YouTube link to the training.
The form is attached to all those emails I've been deleting.
Yes,
Okay,
but I will send you a new
but
form.
it sounds like I'll get another one. Okay, sorry.
All right, any other questions for Jamie? All right, Vincent, item 8, old business ethics update. And Vince, I apologize, and I would like to work on our agenda items. It's not my intention to have the state's attorney's office sit through everything.
That's okay.
Like we could have moved you up as well.
Yeah, not a problem.
I apologize, sir.
Yeah, not a problem. Just a brief update. So I have drafted the lobby registration ordinance to go along with the new act that has come out. And just to follow up from a question from, I believe, last time. So the act was signed in October, but it actually won't go into effect until January of next year. The draft that I've put together is going to go through a review process in our office and then sent out. What I will note is one of the changes, we're trying to follow along the statute as closely as possible, because the prior law says a unit of local government may adopt an ordinance that imposes requirements similar to those imposed by this act. And that has now since been deleted and changed, where now it says no unit of local government may regulate lobbying in a manner inconsistent with this act. So from that interpretation, we really need to follow exactly what the statute is saying. Otherwise, it would be deemed invalid. So that's kind of the update right now. Once it gets that review process done, we're going to send it to Mr. Iqbal for his initial comments and then send it out to the committee.
So Mo has not received that yet?
No, he has not.
Okay. But Mo, there is no delay from our end. We're getting it to you as fast as we can.
Understood.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Vince, appreciate your time.
All right. Take care.
Jamie, could you speak to interim health department analysis?
Yes,
Or
actually,
introduce.
I'd just like to introduce Pat Farah. She was here last meeting as well, and she's going to provide you an update on the status of that analysis.
Good morning. It seems like just yesterday I was here telling you about the project. So good to be back. Thank you again for having me. In your packet is a summary, kind of a midpoint of where I am with the project. Wanted to give you an update on my activities, some of the information that I've found so far, and I'll only take a couple minutes since you did get the written report. The intent of the project is to get some information from the health department staff and to provide you with some direction and information recommendations on services, staffing, workforce environment, And then specifically, what's included in this report are some key qualities that the staff identified as necessary in the next executive director. I did 52 interviews, face-to-face or virtual interviews with the staff in the health department, all levels of staff, from leadership, management level, all the way down to frontline reception staff. I have to commend you on the staff that you have there. Given what's gone on in this pandemic, they are an unbelievably dedicated group of people who have kept a really positive attitude during this last 18 months. And it's reflected in the comments that they provided to me. They were very thoughtful. They were, almost everyone came with their comments prepared. They took the time to think about the questions I was going to ask them. So that was a really good indicator that this wasn't just a complaint session that they felt they were coming to in this interview, but they'd really thought about what would be positive change or positive service expansion in the department. I wanted to make sure that I told you that I did ensure each one of them in the interview that their information, their specific comments would be kept confidential. So what I'm going to do is take the summary of those comments and provide you with some recommendations and suggestions in a final report. The second page of this report, if you can scroll down, I know that you are going to begin the process to hire a new executive director, and I wanted to make sure that I provided you with the feedback from the staff on that process as quickly as possible. So what you have here is just their comments and their input on skills, qualities, attributes, things that they want to see in the next executive director. And again, their comments to me were very, very thoughtful. They were very specific about wanting someone who was a strong leader, involved in the community. The only real, I guess if you want to call it, skill that was common across a large majority of the staff was they felt it was important that the person have a medical or clinical background. Most of them identified at least a master's prepared RN in that position. I'm not going to go through the specifics of this because I know that you're on a time crunch here for your committee meeting, but I would be happy to answer any questions or give you more information before the final report, which I believe is their next committee meeting. Okay.
And Pat, I do, I want to be deliberate in my words on this, but are you finding that the direction, the scope, the objective, the mission statement of the department is being met, exceeded, not there? Are we in target with what our expectations are? And have they given you any indication of an attitude that this is where we are, and I believe this is where we want to be?
That's
Is
one
that
of the
flavor coming through?
One of the things that I really probed about is, given your current requirements in terms of service prevention or service provision, how do you feel you're doing? But then I also pushed them to talk about, what do you feel you should be or could be doing, given you're the county health department? And there has been some really positive ideas and suggestions in that area. I'm in the process now of circling back with the leadership team about the services that were identified that either there were gaps in services or potential expansion in services, as well as what would it take to staff any new services that are suggested.
Okay. I know that I would appreciate maybe a one-on-one with you and Jamie, just to bring us up, because if there's something that we feel should be added to or supplemented into let's do that before it's too late. But again, didn't want to step into that arena until you had enough.
Yeah,
If you have the flavor though, that we should.
I don't yet. I mean, just generally in my head, because there were 50 some
There's a lot, I know.
interviews.
I agree. Well
I'm in
done.
the process right now of compiling that into some meaningful categories. And hope to have that done in the next week or so. And then we'll circle back with the leadership team to talk about that. And then would be ready to say, here are some big categories, if that makes
After
sense.
Thanksgiving, if we can just have a loop-in phone call, that'd be great.
Sure. Great.
Okay, any
Thank you.
questions at this point? Thank you all. And Blair, I do see your note on screen saying that we're running a little late, and I apologize, but we do have some important, items today, so. Business analysis update, Jamie?
I'm just going to give a very quick update since I know we're busy. Just want to make sure the committee knows that our department is working hard on that business analysis. We've gotten org charts from all the departments, and we're sorting through job descriptions right now, trying to match those up to both org charts and the payroll system, and really get a good handle on everything, all the different positions in the county. We do have approximately 500 unique job descriptions within Kane County. So that is what we'll be looking at. The number we'll be using as we go out for RFP for our consultant. That consultant will be looking at the job descriptions with us and making sure those jobs are pointed and a market analysis is done on them. But I just kind of wanted to let you know that we are working hard on that project and it is moving forward.
Jamie, have all departments across the county signed on?
The only two departments that are not participating is the Recorder's Office and the Regional Office of Education.
Okay.
Every other department is participating and has been actively working with us to get job descriptions and org charts and everything worked out.
Dynamite. I might have some additional questions on that at a later point in time.
Okay.
Any questions for Jamie on this? Mavis?
Dates here. So is that okay that that they've opted out of this? Why have they opted out?
They're elected offices, so we can't necessarily compel them. The recorder didn't give a specific reason. I think the Regional Office of Education, a lot of theirs are set or more statutory, but as elected officials, we can't really compel them. It's their option whether or not they want to do this.
And Mavis, just to let you know, I've not spoken with either of them yet at all. There's been no reach out from me to say, hey, you should be involved with this and
Right.
let me extol the virtues of why. That hasn't happened. And, now that we know who they are, let's, we'll go to the next level.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I believe, Blair, what you have on screen is wrong. Item 8, the agenda that I have in front of me says A is ethics, B is interim health, C is business analysis update, and D is tuition reimbursement. I don't see tuition reimbursement on this, what's on screen.
It is C.
We had a number of technical difficulties. Yeah, it is on as C up there when we uploaded this
It's
packet.
just turned around.
Okay.
It's got C as tuition reimbursement and D is business analysis.
So B and E are the same on the screen?
Again, we had a number of
Got it.
technical difficulties
Yeah,
in making this packet all throughout
B
last
and E
week.
are the same.
Okay, super. Let's go into the tuition reimbursement portion of this. For those of you that received my email, my perspective on this is that I have been able to, or I'm trying to discriminate the difference between tuition reimbursement and continuing education. That being, just to explain myself, that being, you have a person who's in the accounting department and IRS rules have changed and they need to update the credentials or learn those new rules. I believe we should pay for that person. You have somebody that's in IT and does, Microsoft and version 11 is now out instead of version 10 and you need to be updated. You have somebody in the auditor's office that needs, I get it. That's continuing education, which is very different than a tuition program that says, hey, we want to pay for somebody's tuition to get their degree. And so I have lumped those into two separate buckets and challenged Jamie and the staff to look at it from that perspective. I don't know that that's a right perspective or a wrong perspective, correct or incorrect. That's just the way I've chosen to do it because I don't want to find ourselves years from now looking at something saying, why did they leave this so muddy? Why couldn't it have been clearer? I think those two buckets make it clear. And that's without setting limits or deadlines or, blah, 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 blah. I just want to lay that out there. And if the committee's okay with that, let's keep moving on this. And Jamie, if you could bring us up to speed as to where we're at.
Okay, Blair, can you check and see if you got an email from staff that has that draft policy so you can put it up on the screen? What we really aimed to do was do that specification, as Cliff mentioned, where we're going to separate what would be tuition reimbursement from qualifying work-related education is actually the term used by the IRS. It's actually pulled IRS publication 970, chapter 12, where it talks about the difference between qualifying work-related education and then what would be considered a non-deductible tuition. Qualifying work-related education, and what it says is education that meets one of the following two tests. It's required by the employer or the law to keep the present salary, status, or job. An example of this would be something like our attorneys in our state's attorney's office and public defender's office are required to get continuing legal education to maintain their law license. That would be training. That would be covered under a training budget and would not need to have the tuition reimbursement policy attached. It's also education that maintains or improves the skills needed in the present work. So for the job you have, it maintains or improves the skills needed to complete that job. However, if the education follows one of the following, it would not be considered work qualifying education, would be tuition. And that would be any education needed to meet the minimal education requirements for the present trade or business. And just for example, I'll use the state's attorney again. Going to law school, even if they were, say, an intern while they were in law school, would not be covered as training for them to receive their law education that they're going to need to get a job as an attorney. So that would be something that qualifies a minimum requirement. The other thing is any part of a program of study that qualifies you for a new trade or business, or for example, a promotion or something of that nature. So it's outside of the scope of your current job. For example, if the secretary in the state's attorney's office wants to go get the education necessary to become a probation officer, that would be tuition, not training, because it is training them for a different job. So I would propose to use these IRS rules, which I think are pretty clear, and go along with what I think is the board's intention to separate those two things and incorporate this into the policy. Blair has on screen, it's literally exactly this language. I know that there are some comments we're going to receive from the auditor, and if she'd like, I see she's here, and if she'd like to share them, she certainly can. She had some language change comments in here, and it would also need to be vetted by the state's attorney's office before this would be brought to you for a vote. So this is just for discussion on if this is the direction you would like us to go.
So before we bring up for comments within the committee, again, you've heard me say 1,000 times, one of my super skills is that I know I'm not the smartest guy in the world in the room, but I typically know who is. And in this room this morning, we have 3 attorneys that I know are smarter than I am. But let's just walk through and say, Ms. Lewis, did you have a chance to look through this, and are you okay going in this direction? This is not finalized in any way, shape, or form.
So I am not one of those smart attorneys, but having spent many, many years in the manufacturing business, separating training from tuition reimbursement is absolutely the way we should be doing this. And I totally agree. And yes, I did read it thoroughly.
Miss Al, thank you so much. Deb?
This is a really interesting study, and I think following the IRS is always a good idea.
Mavis?
I have some questions. Why 80%? Why 2,400 per year? And why a $19,000 lifetime maximum?
Let's sidestep those because I think those get to the next level. And let's just keep it, if we can for today, let's keep it at the concept level and not go down to the granular level of the amounts.
Okay.
Because I don't have answers for any of those yet.
I have a concept question.
Okay,
Could this be, so I feel like some people cannot afford to pay up front for a class. So I would like to consider that it's not a reimbursement, we pay up front.
do me a favor, put that in an email to Jamie so that we're collecting that. I think that's a next level question as well.
Jamie, can you just make a note of that? So,
Yes, I certainly can.
okay. That we pay up front.
Davist, Mark? Mark, still
There we
with
go.
us?
Yes. I'm okay.
You're okay with
I like
it?
the direction it's going.
Mo?
Yes, I have a comment that we need to have two policies, one for the continuing education and the other one for the tuition. I think Jamie is on the right track. We should separate them. And their rule should be different.
So that's an attaboy and keep moving in this direction, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we should have two, one for the continuing education, like she mentioned, the attorney is getting training to keep your license, and the other one is a paralegal want to become an attorney, or an officer from the sheriff department wants to be an attorney. So those are two different things. And I
So
think
separate these out into two different policies
yeah, two
rather than
different
keep them within
documents,
one?
yes.
Okay,
Two different documents, yeah.
okay. Interesting. Michael? I think Mike's okay with everything.
Yes.
Ken? Shepro still with us? Madam Chair?
Conceptually, yes. And I do think that Mr. Iqbal is on the right track with having, and I think that's what the intent is, doing two separate policies, because they're two separate programs, indeed, tuition reimbursement, as well as continuing education.
I think if we leave these in one document, it just leaves it muddy.
Mhm. Two separate, because they're
But-
two separate tracks.
Yep, I agree. Okay, Jamie, does that give us direction that we need to continue moving to the next level?
Yes, that does give direction on the beginning of the policy. Did anyone want to provide input then as to the content of the policy, as Ms. Bates mentioned?
Let's bring up Penny now,
Okay.
or anybody else that had a comment before we go to the next level with that.
I want to ditto the IRS is pretty clear about that.
Okay,
I like the IRS guidelines.
So we did submit some changes or suggestions yesterday, eliminating a couple of options or areas. What I don't see in the policy is the separation between elected officials and the employees that are covered by the county board. So that's something significant that needs to be addressed. As internal controls, we have a different ability to operate our office.
all right, so you're saying a set of rules for things controlled by the board versus a set of rules that are controlled by the individual county-wide elected departments.
Well, essentially, anything that you're putting in this policy is specific to the employees that are covered by county board. The policy handbook is actually a suggestion for elected officials because we have internal controls. It's a very big difference.
Interesting.
It's-
Interesting.
yeah, It's.
I don't have a comment to that. Interesting.
So to
Wait, let's go, Madam Chair.
To clarify then, since, for instance, you're an elected official, a countywide elected official, you can choose to adopt those policies or not. Is that what you're suggesting?
I can choose to operate my office however I feel fit.
So, but you answered my question then. You can choose to adopt these suggested policies for your office or choose not to, because you can choose to run your office as you see appropriate.
The policy handbook is for the employees that are covered by the county board.
I understand. No, I understand.
I want to make that very specific that the authority for these policies is handled by county board. The authority of my office is covered by me.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm hearing you very clearly. And I'm not arguing with you. I'm just drilling down a little bit. So if there is going to be a question going forward, I'm just hypothetical question, if that was the case, if there was a question, if it was tuition reimbursement or training, then that elected office, not your office, that elected office would have their own unique discretion on whether or not to put it in one of those tracks, if you so choose even to adopt those tracks.
That would be internal control, yes.
So then if that's the case, then we're only dealing with Jamie. Then if that's the case, if everything is under internal control, does everything that the county provide to our entire portfolio of employees, is that under the jurisdiction of each elected official? Meaning, does health insurance, days off, all of our benefit package, is that under the control of elected officials?
I think I can clarify a little bit. For example, the tuition reimbursement program is a program offered by the county board using riverboat funding. So if they would like to participate in that program and access that riverboat funding, then they would have to follow our policy. However, if they can fund it within their own funding, they can do whatever they want. So the tuition reimbursement program would apply to anyone who would like to participate in it. And the same is true of most county policies. Some offices of elected officials have chosen to adopt our policy handbook. Some have written their entire own handbook, such as the state's attorney's office has a completely separate handbook. When it comes to the health insurance, again, that is a program offered and funded by the county. So if they would like to participate in our health insurance, they have to adopt our policies regarding health insurance. So they can't, for example, change the eligibility rules on our programs because those programs are offered by the county and their internal control allows them to either participate in it as the county has written or not participate. So if, for example, the auditor wanted to go seek her own health insurance and had the budget available to do that, that would be within her right. But if she'd like to use our insurance, then she has to use our policies. But when it comes to vacation time, sick time, days off, not only can they have their own policies, the majority of them do.
And do we have all of that in writing? I mean, does each one of those unique elected officials countywide, we have an affidavit saying we're accepting this and not that?
They do not have to send that to us, nor do they typically. And we have no means to get that from them.
Should they? Just.
Are you asking Cliff? The answer is absolutely. I mean, it'd be very difficult for us to conduct our operations blindly and in the dark, guessing what our counterparts are doing and how that's, and it doesn't have to be intrusive.
No.
It just has to be a checklist that says this department does their own that. This department handles their own health insurance. This department handles their own, and we should absolutely know that.
Unfortunately, internal controls allow me to keep that information in my office.
But if we're,
and that might be true. That doesn't mean I'm comfortable with it. I mean, I'm just, I like you. We'll just agree to disagree. It's no big deal. I mean, it's.
We do share a lot with HR. We're pretty open, but it's not a requirement for us.
What about for funding? I'm thinking budget now, just budgeting.
So I think I'm comfortable in saying right now, this is branching into a secondary branch.
Yes,
The
indeed it
primary
is.
branch that I'm hearing, do you have enough information to continue to the next level in 2 separate documents for tuition reimbursement and continuing education?
I believe, yes, I can at least believe I can have a draft for vote of tuition reimbursement next month. If anyone would like to provide any additional comments as to the content, I certainly would appreciate the comments of anyone who'd like to give them. I'm talking about the part below the line, the eligibility, the function. The auditor has provided a number of excellent comments to that. Ms. Lewis
keep 'em
provided
coming. Yeah, keep 'em
comments, Dr.
coming.
Iqbal did, but if anyone else would like to provide comments as to, for example, the reimbursement rate or the grade that is required or any of the details of the policy, I would love to have them and incorporate them.
If I can ask discretion of the committee, would anybody have a problem with me putting that same email out to the board asking to solicit advice? Rather than move this from this committee to the next committee, I'd be way more comfortable if 24 people all chimed in on this and gave us that. So we're all working on at one time to incorporate it.
That'd be fine.
Do we have consensus on that from the committee? Anybody opposed to that? Thank you. And then Jamie, I think there's a second, what I've heard is that there's a second tangent on this, which involves discerning some information between the roles of the county-wide elected as it meets the county policies and regulations and handbook and benefits. And if we can work together to maybe clear that up, I think that's probably, now that it's been raised, it's probably an appropriate time to open that up and take a look at it. Does anybody disagree with that statement? Okay.
Would you like that as a agenda item for a following month, or would you like
Yes.
me to? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Let's not let this fall off the shelf, and you and I will take this offline and put some structure to it for the committee.
Okay, sounds great.
Fair? Okay, super. Any other questions on this? All right, let's move on to new business. And again, I know, and now I'm unsure as to which agenda I'm following, but use of budgetary savings for vacancies. Jamie, do you want to take that one as well? And Jamie, thanks for, your plate is loaded, especially coming off of open enrollment, and thank you for all you do.
The resolution, that's just a draft. We're not looking to vote on anything. I think we're just looking for input here. Amending Kane County financial policies to clarify use of budgetary savings resulting from vacancies. This was sent back from finance as something that they wanted human services to discuss. If you want to pull that up on the screen, Blair, should be the very last page of the packet.
Is the gist of this, Jamie, going along the lines of saying, listen, if somebody left the department and that leaves us more money, we could reallocate that money as we see fit?
I think it was to say you can't reallocate it however you want, but you can use it. And it describes the ways that you can use money. So if you have a vacancy, it creates some money. However, for budgeting next year, it wouldn't necessarily be there in the following year. So if you paid somebody, $50,000 a year, and they were gone for 3 months, we'll say 60,000 because it's easier math. They were gone for 3 months. You'd have 15,000 extra dollars that year. If you use that money to give raises to other people that are below the market value, and bring them up and then rehire someone again for $60,000 that has raised your base salaries, that you wouldn't be able to do that. You would have to then rehire that $60,000 position at $45,000 to make up for the $15,000 that you reallocated. I think that's kind of what it's getting at. Erica might be able to describe better. This was actually birthed in finance, so I'm paraphrasing my understanding of it.
That's why you're here. Erica or Dale, either one of you have comments, please bring them up. And
yeah, I think Joe's online too. I'm here in case there was some other questions,
oh,
but I
and
believe
I
that's,
apologize, I just don't see him on the list there. But Joe, did you want to chime in? Oh, I do see him. I'm so sorry.
Yes, I think Jamie has described it perfectly. it was really an effort to, first of all, specify what is allowed. And so if, for example, you have a vacancy and you have the remaining employees are working extra hours and are incurring overtime costs, you can certainly apply the savings from the vacancy to cover the cost of overtime. Or sometimes you have employees who are picking up a higher level of responsibility. For example, if a director were to resign and now you have one of the subordinates taking on a greater responsibility, you can certainly increase their salary temporarily through a stipend or whatever means is appropriate, and use the savings from the vacancy to cover that until the vacancy is filled. And also what Jamie referred to was also what I had in mind, and that is sometimes when a higher paid individual leaves, it becomes an opportunity to restructure the office, increase the wages of the employees who are there, who are really undercompensated in comparison to the market, and to, over time, perhaps their expertise and their competencies have increased. And now this is an opportunity to reward them for improving in their productivity. And then you can bring in the new person at a lower level and still stay within the overall operating budget of the office going forward. And then that final paragraph was just to make sure that you are within that total annualized budget, because we have seen examples and I won't, call anyone out on it, but we have seen examples where people have taken advantage of vacancies by giving increases to their existing employees. But then when they roll their budget forward into the next year, they have all those higher salaries being rolled forward, and then they're trying to bring the vacancies on at the same original level, which then boosts that entire base salary over and above what the board had actually intended when they authorized the 2% increase, for that year. So that's the intent of that final paragraph, was to try to keep everything in line. And we do try to make those adjustments when we see them coming through, when we're working on the next year's budget, but having this in codified in the financial policies would at least be something that we can refer to as an authoritative source as to why we're doing it.
So Joe, in this particular document, are you suggesting that this is all being managed at the department head level? This does not need to go to finance. It doesn't need to go to the board. This is just something that is discretionary from the department head and Madam Chair, maybe?
Well, within the department head, at least my suggestion through this policy draft is that this is what is allowable for the department head. If you wish to, add.
I'm looking for in the document who has this authority. Does the document say who has the authority to pull the trigger on any of this?
No, that's a good point.
That's what I'm looking for to be added.
My intention was that this is for the department head, and we could specify that, or if you would like to specify with approval by a department chair, or I'm sorry, committee chair, whatever you'd like to do, we can certainly add that language.
So let's spin this around the room. Anita, do you have any questions on this?
Sorry, I had to unmute you. No, I'm good with it.
Deb?
I'm good too. And I wanted to point out that we recently had this conversation at the Forest Preserve. One of the things that people are considering is, do I have a chance to move up in my department? Or are the people who are above me going to stay forever so that I need to leave in order to improve my position holistically? So I think this policy gives the department head an opportunity to move his money around and move his people up as other people resign, and then bring in new people with expectations that they are starting in a department and then will look forward to rising throughout their time in the
Would you
department.
be okay if it was department head and committee chair approval?
Yes, absolutely.
Mark, I'm sorry, Mavis. I'm sorry, Mavis.
I'm having trouble with this last sentence under 1P, use of budgetary savings created by vacancies. Actually, it's a paragraph. The total annualized salaries of current and vacated positions within a department shall not exceed the annual personnel wage and salary budget for the department and shall become the base salary and wage budget.
Sorry, Mavis, we can't hear you.
Thank you. The total annualized salaries of current and vacated positions within a department shall not exceed the annual personnel wage and salary budget for the department and shall become the base salary and wage budget for the next fiscal year. I thought that should be shall not become the base salary.
I thought the same. I thought Joe was saying, and Joe, help us out here, but I thought you were saying it does not become the base for the next one.
Well, it does in the sense that as long as it's, I mean, the point of this, and I'm sorry if I obviously didn't communicate it as clearly as it needs to be communicated, but what I was trying to communicate is that you need to stay within the, let me back up. The annualized salaries of any changes you make need to stay within your annual budget.
Yes.
And so, and then that annual budget is what rolls forward to next year to become the base budget for next year. In addition to which we would add whatever amount of wage increase the county board would decide. You know, typically it's been 2%, and maybe different if you're a union employee. And then also, you know, whatever the board decides to.
Joe, I understand what you're saying. I think we can reword that just a bit.
Okay.
We'll take that offline.
Okay.
Mark Armstrong uses a great example when he's explaining levies to people about with a pie. You know, your budget's the pie. You could slice it up. If you have a slice left over, you can divide it up among the people that are having it. You just can't add to the pie.
Right. And so we just need to figure out how to say that in that final paragraph.
This last, this phrase.
I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And I understand what Joe's saying as well. I just need to figure out how to wordsmith it.
Yeah. Sounds like.
Mo, do you have any input?
Oh, no, thank you.
Michael?
I don't think I like it. I think it can be misused too easily.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we don't have consensus to move this out of committee. Jamie, you have a comment, or can you and I take this offline? And
I just wanted to add that it is the intention to address this type of issue a little more specifically as we do the business analysis. The goal is to have a compensation policy at the end of this that would, we would have established ranges for jobs based on those job descriptions. And I think it would be easier to draft a policy like this when we have those ranges. So we could say, for example, you know, raises can be given as long as they stay within that established approved range for that position. We just won't have that information until this is complete, which will be next spring. So I think this is intended to kind of hold us over until that point, when we will be able to be a little more specific, because we just don't have the data now to say, you know, a department head could raise a person's salary to reach the established range, since we don't have any established ranges.
Joe and Dale, can we kick this for 30 days to refine it and then come back to finance with it? Is that okay? Joe, is that okay with you?
Oh, yes, that's fine.
Perfect. Jamie, you and I will take this offline and then get this out to committee for next month, and we'll get this.
Okay.
Mavis?
Quick, to go along with Mr. Kenyon, it could almost be used as creating a purposeful vacancy to manipulate other people's salaries. So got to be careful.
I totally understand all sides of this.
Okay.
And I think we just have just a little bit of work to do.
What happens in the rest of the world?
And we'll provide that
It
info.
doesn't happen in the rest of the world. I mean, if you,
That goes away. That money
you
goes away.
don't get to pass it out and say, hey, we got this
Uh-huh.
left over, so everybody gets it. It's too, it can be too dangerous.
I totally agree. That's why we're not rushing it through.
But
It does have-
I can see why people, excuse me.
Madam Chair? No,
uh,
please.
I can see why that may be happening because their salaries have been deflated for so long that this is one way to be able to increase compensation for existing employees within the restraints of a budget, a very tight budget. So this may just be, I guess, workaround to start adequately paying our employees
I don't have the
in a
answer,
different
but I
method.
just think it can be not looked at the right way.
Yeah. And Madam Chair, just for the record,
Salaries should be adjusted for everybody, you know, for what they do.
Do it the right way.
Yeah.
It's been pretty cheap for a long time in Kane County.
Understood.
Hear,
And Madam
hear.
Chair, personally, I disagree with that methodology. That doesn't make me right and you wrong in any way, shape or form. It's just, we just disagree on that and we'll find something that'll work. That's, I'm not,
Oh, I'm not saying that should be a policy. I'm just saying that that may be an outcome of this.
absolutely, absolutely.
I do think we'll have good solid data coming out of the business
I
analysis
agree.
that
We're
will
just,
make
this
this
is
much
just a
easier.
Band-Aid. I mean, and I hope we're all looking at it as a Band-Aid until the analysis is done. So. Okay, if we can move on to our last item, and Jamie, do you want to take that or would you?
I think that was yours.
Okay, I will take that. We are, we find ourselves in a position that's somewhat unusual, but not unanticipated. We did have a change in human resources. Jamie has been gracious enough that months ago, we came to her and said, we need an interim director. And we asked if her and her family and her lifestyle could accept the extra responsibilities that we were going to require. And quite honestly, for me, I asked her if she could use this time as a reflection to figure out, is this a position that she might entertain for a full time? Well, we are to the point now where it's appropriate time for us to begin interviewing for that position. Jamie is, I believe I can say you are putting your name in the hat for the position. I think she's done a wonderful job, but we do have the responsibility of looking outside of the county and interviewing and figuring out what does the next position look like? What does the next director look like? And we're going to be kicking off that pursuit. I realize it's the holidays. I realize we're juggling 1,000 things, but honestly, to be going without a permanent director for the health department, without a permanent director for the human services department, there's no reason that we shouldn't be trying to wrap some of these up before the end of the year. And I've kind of imposed that deadline to say, let's try and get this done. So, Madam Chair, am I square and fair on that?
I've talked to Jamie. Yes, you are. I've talked to Jamie about this. I believe she has a job description that she's put together for your review. Once it gets approved, we can put it up and go through the process of announcing it, seeking it, putting it on the proper web searches for jobs.
And
accepting applications, and perhaps you may want to convene a committee of board members inside of this committee and outside.
Okay.
A committee of 3 or 5, however you feel appropriate for interviews.
Okay. And I do want to applaud Jamie that this isn't exactly comfortable, and she has been nothing but professional the entire way and understands whether she would be selected or not. She is an increasingly valuable asset to us, and we appreciate everything that you've done and continue to do, and your professionalism is just so very appreciated. So I just want to communicate that. Okay. Mr. Kenyon, motion to replace reports on file
I would move that. Or by unanimous.
by
consent.
unanimous consent, and Ms. Bates will second that. All in favor?
We
Aye.
don't have to vote on it.
Vote, it's unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent is it. We just ask for opposition, and if there's no opposition, it carries.
I do move we adjourn.
I see no need for executive session. Mr. Kenyon is moved for adjournment. Ms. Bates is seconded.
Sunlight's out again.
There we go. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all for your time this morning.